I'm Dan, and this is 10,000 Hours of Indie, a podcast exploring new music and delving deeper into what goes on in the background of the independent music industry. I'm a musician and passionate music lover, and I wanted to delve deeper into new music in the independent scene around the world. I also saw this as a chance to help artists connect and share their stories, so if there's someone you hear and you want to find out more about, every podcast has links in the show description. Get involved, help this community grow, follow on the 10,000 Hours of Indie socials, you can find all the links in the show description. And also feel free to email me about anything music related, 10,000indie@gmail.com. I'm open to any ideas and love listening to your promos. August Gladstone is a singer-songwriter from California who takes influence from the folk revival of the 60s and 70s. A little bit country, a little bit Bob Dylan, etc. August released his debut album, The Golden West, on the 16th of May, and it's certainly an interesting journey of an album. Hello, August. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you very much for having me. I'm honored to be on.
So, a little backstory about August. When he first got in touch, I thought his name was familiar. It took me a few days, but I worked out that I actually know his mum, who came to Finland to direct a play my wife was involved in a few years ago. So very much a small world moment for both of us, I think.
Very much so. Shockingly small, and it sort of just shows how deeply the currents of artistry run throughout the world.
You're quite lucky in the fact your parents gave you a super strong name to work with.
I feel like, I had no name for 10 days after I was born. They were trying something new every day. They're calling me baby, calling me boy, picking a different moniker every single day. And finally, it was coming down to my baptism, and my grandma said, "You got to name the kid." So we just picked my great-grandfather's name on my mom's side, which was August, and my great-grandfather's name on my dad's side, which was Solomon. So August Solomon Gladstone. Throughout middle school, it was a lot to deal with. I wanted to just be named Hunter Smith, but it suited me well in my coming of age.
So let's start with your background, because you come from a performing arts family. We did briefly discuss before we started recording that you're relatively new to music. So how did you arrive at music from your background, etc.?
As mentioned, my parents are both in the theater. They met in conservatory. They're both actors. And my mom started a dance theater company in our hometown, and my dad ran our local theater as the artistic director. So I was very lucky to grow up in a family that cherished, above all else, art for art's sake. And it exposed me to a lot of unorthodox, strange, interesting means of artistic expression between dance theater and traditional theater and writing and poetry and music and all these different avenues. And throughout all of that, I was really compelled to be an artist, first and foremost. That is the family business, for lack of a better term. I was a child actor. I started acting when I was 3 years old, just because it's what my parents did, and I wanted to do it too. I wanted to do what they were doing. So I was acting for a long time. I did some stints on Broadway when I was 6 years old, and a couple TV shows when I was a kid, and then I shelved it because I just wanted to be normal. I wanted to be a kid who went out and didn't have this sort of unorthodox upbringing anymore. And my parents, to their credit, were so willing to do that. And, you hear the horror stories of so many parents of child actors who are shoehorning their own dreams onto their children. My parents were very much like, this is exactly what you want to do. This is the journey that you are taking. It's your life. We're not going to thrust ourselves onto that. So I think that was perfect because it allowed me to explore, be a child, and then find my way back into the arts on my own accord. So in high school, I started making films and writing films. And then I went to college for writing for film and television. And I was specializing in comedy. And I really wanted to be a TV writer, which is what compelled me to move out to Los Angeles after I graduated in 2022. And pretty immediately after graduation, I got a job in the heart of Hollywood, working at a very high level across talent management and production. And that sort of twisted my dreams on their head and made me realize that I didn't necessarily want to work in the business of this. I wanted to follow what I'd been doing my entire life and do something for the joy of doing it. So I started writing poetry out of that as a means of sort of cathartic self-expression. And then poetry slowly transitioned into music when I realized that nobody reads poetry.
Well, English teachers, but other than that, yeah. I love a good bit of poetry, and I think I probably write in the same way as you, because I find words flow really easily, but the music challenges me. So that's where I'm at. It sounds like you're in the same place.
I would say so. Yeah, I'm certainly a lyricist first and foremost. That's what I want the heart of my work to be, is just a means of tricking people into listening to poetry.
So how about your musical influences? What do you listen to, and what have you listened to get inspiration for this album?
I'm very influenced by the 60s and 70s folk revival. I would say that my greatest influence is probably Leonard Cohen. He's my favorite poet. I've had probably the most catharsis that I've ever had in listening to another artist through Leonard Cohen. He's made me feel the most. I've wanted, if I could write like anybody, it would be like, I'd want to write like him. Bob Dylan, of course, is in there as well. But I would say more so than Bob Dylan, it's sort of a combination of Leonard Cohen and sort of the raw vitality of like Jim Morrison's poetry. That's been a huge influence on me, especially as I've been in Los Angeles. But really, who I've fallen in love with over the past year and a half, and was really influenced this album, The Golden West, is Townes Van Zandt. And sort of the Western folk poetry, sort of combining the more philosophical, headier New York folk scene sensibilities with the more rugged and self-centered, nature-centered, gentle humanity, experience-centered poetry of the American West.
Your website claims you are a writer, poet, clown, musician, and problem. Which is your strongest trait?
Certainly a problem. It's a good question. It's something that I'm balancing constantly, and it's an eternal quest for who I am on any given day. And that's why I love music and the live performance thereof, is that it allows me an outlet to be all of those things. More so than being a straight up melodic musician at my live shows, especially, I try to be more of a raconteur. I try to have them be more storytelling experiences rather than musical experiences, where music is serving to elevate the performance aspect rather than performance elevating the music.
Also on your website, it says you've written for members of Supertramp, Crowded House, and Ringo's All-Star Band. Tell me, how's all that come about?
My producer, Mark Hart, who is a multi-instrumentalist of the highest order, Supertramp, Crowded House, Ringo's All-Star Band, and many more. My mom and my aunt came to visit Los Angeles probably 2 years ago, randomly stayed at an Airbnb, and it was Mark's Airbnb. They got to talking as everybody does, just chit-chatting, and asked what he does for a living. And he said, I'm largely retired now, but I've been in a couple bands. I'm a musician. And this is just about the time when I was starting out doing music about 2 years ago. My mom said, as mothers do, "My son does music. You should talk to him about his music."
Embarrassment moment.
Exactly right. And I'd written 5-6 songs at that point. And my mom texts me and says, "I met the most wonderful, kind guy. He wants to listen to your songs. I'll set up a time for you to come over and talk to him." So I did so while they were there, and I met him. Come to find out, I've been in a few bands, were these legendary, incredible, groundbreaking bands that are just unbelievable. And I am incredibly honored and grateful that I was able to play him a couple of my songs, and he resonated with them. And from there, he was really taken with my lyrics primarily and said, I have a number of songs that I've been working on with my band, and we need lyrics for them because we're a bunch of musicians, a bunch of instrumentalists, and we need somebody who can give us stories to tell over them. So I got to write a couple of songs for him and his band, which is full of incredible, legendary session musicians. And from there, it just started a beautiful, incredible sort of mentorship that I'm so grateful for. And he produced my first EP that I put out last summer. And then he also produced The Golden West, and I recorded it in his studio. And it's just been amazing as someone who is relatively new to it, being able to record in a place where you see gold records hanging on the walls is shocking and startling and humbling at the same time.
Was there some trepidation when you first went in there to play in front of him for the first time?
Absolutely, there was. Absolutely. I was incredibly nervous and really just feeling tense and sort of reverential. I was stepping very lightly, and Mark, to his credit, did everything in his power to assuage and support me throughout that, saying, I like what you do. I want to work with you. And it's become so much more comfortable since then. And I dog sit for him and everything like that. It's become a really wonderful partnership and friendship. And I'm incredibly grateful at how it's evolved.
So you released your debut album, The Golden West, earlier this month. It's very much a solo album with a couple of guests in places, which we'll come to later. Why such a stripped back take when so many people are focusing on making as big a sound as possible at the moment?
That's a great question. And I think, again, it comes back to poetry. To me, first and foremost, this is a poetic album. This is a folk album. This is, if anything, a spoken word album, which is told through this sort of Western mythology. So I did not want to make an overbearing sound. I did not want to do something that was stepping on the words. Every piece of instrumentation in there, every piece of the melody was placed there specifically to amplify the spoken word. That is what I consider my truest form of artistry to be, is the writing. So for my debut album, especially, I'm an independent artist. I don't have any sort of budget to be putting into expanding it and getting bigger than I can go. So on the one hand, it was an artistic choice to elevate what I was most proud of. But at the same time, it was also just working within my means. And luckily enough for me, those two things seem to work in tandem.
The storytelling folk genre is becoming popular again, with artists like Jesse Wells bringing it into the mainstream. Why do you think that is? To me, it seems that politics has a lot to do with that coming back, certainly in America. Do you think that's the case?
Absolutely. I can go on a very long diatribe about the state of culture and politics in America. But I think at the end of the day, what people across the world want, and in America specifically right now, is that they want to feel connected to their fellow man. They want a shared experience. This is the most divisive time in our history since the Civil War. What we need to remind each other of is our connectedness. And that is not done through AI. That is not done through making sounds that are big and bold and inaccessible. It's through making art that anybody could make, that can speak to anybody, that can cut through all the noise of the world and speak to you on a person-to-person level. That's what folk music does so well. And it's existed so well in these times of social and political upheaval because it is this common thread of society. And that's not just American folk music. That is African folk music as well. That's Latin American folk music. That's European folk music, Celtic folk music. Any brand of folk music, I think, is inherently a political art. And at this point in America's history, political art has never been more important.
As we've discussed, the album is very much written in a storytelling style, and you have a lot of experience in the theatre. You grew up in the theatre. That's your background. How much of that theatre background and the sort of stage writing and things do you think comes out in your songwriting?
I think much of it, most of it. I don't consider myself a country artist. This is an album based in American myth, in Western myth, in this genre, but I don't consider that the truth of me. I consider this album me trying to tell a story in this storytelling style, which is not something that I would be able to do necessarily without the ability to sink into a story theatrically, without the ability to come from that deep storytelling background that I have and seeing stories express themselves across these different mediums, through these different forms, through myths and fables and folktales from across the world. And they've all sort of coalesced into where I currently am physically in my life, which is the American West. And this album was written primarily based on a road trip that I took through a lot of the Western states last year, back in April of last year, where I drove from Los Angeles through Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, all the way back down the coast, and sort of got to experience the mythology inherent to the landscapes of the American West, seeing them all pass by with nothing but open road in front of me and a journal next to me. I felt like I was truly tapping into the chorus of the world out here. And that's where the album came from, more so than trying to do a Johnny Cash album. It was much more based in telling a Western myth.
So do you think this is just one chapter and you might change your musical style for the next thing you do?
I do. Absolutely. I think as long as I'm telling a complete, comprehensive story, I don't necessarily care what genre it's in. I think given the artists that inspire me, I will always lean towards folk. I will always lean towards a sort of stripped back and more honest approach towards it. But the projects that I'm planning in the future have nothing to do with Westerns, have nothing to do with country music, and are much more based in, really more so than anything else, myth and fable. The next album that I'm ideating on and I'm hoping to start recording in the next couple months is more of a Faustian tale. So as long as the album is telling a complete story and has a legitimate emotional arc that is somehow extrapolated from my life, I could care less about what the genre is.
We've talked in very general terms about the album so far. Tell me and the audience a little bit more about some of the themes and some of the passions you had in these songs.
Well, the title itself, The Golden West, is based around, in a roundabout way, my experience with moving out to Los Angeles, which, as I mentioned, was to follow a dream. And then coming to the promised land and realizing that that dream is not necessarily the one that you bought into. And how living in this coast, which is called the Golden Coast, it has this implication of perfection to it. This implication that if you come here, everything will be shining. Everything will be glorious. It will all be a dream. And that's not necessarily the case. So to me, the emotional arc of this album is all about setting up the expectations of a life and then defying them. It's an existential album more than anything else. It's about purpose and an entire lived experience, whether that be through successes, failures, loves, triumph, death, losing yourself. And it's a microcosm of the sort of immensity of the world that I started to feel when coming of age here, when graduating college and finally being an adult on the other side of the world from my family and seeing my whole life flash before my eyes and realizing that it might not necessarily be what I'd always expected it to be.
So on the album, you worked with a couple of other musicians as a bass player and a fiddle player in there. Who are they? Did you know them before? And what do you think they added to your music?
Oh my gosh, they're incredible. Gage Getz played bass on it, and he and I went to high school together, a couple years older than me. And I had no idea that he'd moved out west until one day I was walking around Beverly Hills and I stopped into the Beverly Hills cheese store, and there he was, slinging cheddar.
The shared passion of cheese is something that happens throughout the world. Trust me, it happens in Helsinki as well.
Absolutely. It binds us all together. And he was selling cheese, and we hit him with, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" And we just struck up a conversation, and he was like, "I went to music school. I'm a jazz musician. I play upright bass. I play at at a lot of farmers markets." And I was like, "Man, that's so cool. I'm really trying to get more into music right now. I'd love to chat sometime, hear you play." And from there, we have just started hanging out a lot. And he's was one of the founding members of my band. You know, I was just a solo act for a long time. And because I'd always sort of felt like a musical outsider, like I wasn't a true musician because I was a poet wearing the masks of a musician, I felt like I couldn't necessarily fit into these circles. But through Gage, I felt like I was able to exist in this world a little bit more. And he sort of ushered me into it and showed me what a real musical scene is like, and started playing in my band with me. And from there, I've just loved collaborating with him. And he's an incredibly talented bassist and just knows the language of music so well and does so much to amplify my songs in ways that I never would have thought possible. So I'm honored to be working with him. And similarly, the fiddle player is my friend, Sarah Kirby, who is another one of those very sort of early music pioneers in my life. when I moved out to Los Angeles and I wasn't doing music, I saw her as someone who was and wanted desperately, more so than I could even necessarily speak at the time, wanted to be doing what she was doing. She's an incredibly talented fiddle player, an incredibly talented vocalist, has been a member of multiple really inspiring folk bands. She's in one now called London Boots, which is wonderful. And she was just a close personal friend and is another person who I sort of found my way into doing music through being inspired by. So for both of them, it was only natural that I was so inspired by these two people that I wanted to involve them however much I could on my own projects. And I plan to continue doing so.
Yeah. So if you had to pick one track on the album that was your favorite, which would it be and why?
I might have to say Freedom. It's one of my favorite pieces of lyricism of mine. It is, I think, the most objectively anti-fascist piece on the album. It's the song that I feel the proudest of with its messaging. It's the song that I feel the proudest of when performing it live, and it's the song that I feel the proudest of having written. I wrote it last summer during a residency program that I was in, and there's this Leonard Cohen quote that says, "If I knew where the great songs came from, I'd go there more often." And this is one that came from that kind of phase where I was sort of just immersed in the world around me more so than in thinking about it. And I just sort of I pulled it out of somewhere. And it means a lot to me.
We'll move on to social media. You appear to be another artist who doesn't take your social media too seriously. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek stuff on there and things like that. You're a lot younger than me. How is your relationship with social media? Because I notice you're only on Instagram. So is that for a particular reason? Is it that you don't want to get too bogged down with it, or you just don't enjoy it, or what?
Oh, I can't stand it.
You seem to be quite a people-orientated person. You like to be around people and you get your influences from actual contacts.
That's exactly right. I am on TikTok too. I put stuff out there as well. And I only do so on both of these platforms because as much as I can preach being a hippie and an outsider, I do still have dreams and I do still have goals of where I want my art to take me. And in so doing, you kind of have to play the game. So it is an aspect of it that exhausts me, that I find directly counterintuitive to my own artistic process, to discovering new art, to the human connection at its basest level. I think it's antithetical to humanity. I liked social media when we were playing Farmville on Facebook. That was fun. But beyond that, what it's become is such a perversion of the artistic process. It's such a perversion of any sort of reasoning for why we should do this. And it's started to tie someone's self-worth directly next to the number next to their name. Art is so much more than that. It's spiritual. It's something that cannot be quantifiable in numbers. I can't do math to save my life. There's a reason I'm not an accountant. It's because I can't do numbers. And I think so many artists feel similarly. And I guess what I'm trying to do is poke fun at it and not take it too seriously within the system. I wish I could pull myself out of it and be truly away from it. But I'm not ready or willing to do that yet, as much as I wish I was. So it drags on me.
Let's move on to your live shows. You posted a clip of your most recent show on Instagram. So you're now playing shows with a full band, right?
I am. I have a full band called the Maniac Orchestra, August Gladstone and the Maniac Orchestra, and it's so much fun to play with them. It's so much fun because, as I touched on before when talking about Gage and Sarah, so much of my work is music through a poetic lens, is music through a writer's lens and a performer's lens. So being able to work with people who are incredibly talented musicians in their own right with the ability to tell a story through their melodies, through their instrumentation, through what they can do with the guitar, with the drums, serves these songs that I have thought of from a writerly standpoint in ways that I never could have imagined. And it amplifies them and brings them into new directions that I discover every time I'm playing a live show with them. Every time I play a show with the Maniac Orchestra, I've learned something new about my songs. And that to me is the greatest artistic gift that there is.
The clip sounded much more blues than the album does. Is the music taking a new form with it being performed as a whole band?
It allows us to lean into the rockier aspects that I like. I am lucky enough to be able to go out and do a solo show and have it be intimate and folksy. But when I'm gifted with a 4-piece band of electric musicians, I want to maximize what we can do with that. And as I mentioned before, like Jim Morrison's poetry is a huge inspiration to me. Same with Tom Waits and Nick Cave and these other sort of larger than life frontman personalities. So having a full rock band behind me allows me to lean into that side of my art a little bit more and lean into the sort of showmanship and the actorly aspect of it and the clowny aspect of it, while having people I can lean on to really drive home the energy of the songs.
In terms of live shows, what do you have coming up now?
I'll be in Woodstock this weekend upcoming, returning to the Birdcliff Guild to perform at a showcase over there. And outside of that, my schedule is blissfully open. First 6 months of this year were a hell of a push, getting the album done, doing a lot of shows in support of it. And I'm taking, at the very least, I'm giving myself 2 weeks to not do shows so I can just recuperate a little bit and try to enjoy the come down of what the last few months have been. But after that, we'll see where this summer takes us. There's a number of shows that I'm looking to produce myself, a number of bookers that I work with who are great. I play all over Los Angeles. I do a lot of stuff on the Sunset Strip. So we'll see where it takes us. I'm always looking to play more and meet new people and play out wherever I can. That's the most fun aspect of it for me.
And in general, what's next? You mentioned earlier that you're already starting to think about a second album. Would that be a full band album, or would you continue the way you've been going so far, but just play live with a full band?
That would be a mix of both. I'm really excited because probably 2 weeks ago, I finally cracked the concept. It's mostly written. I would say probably 80% written. 2 other songs that I'm still trying to figure out for it. But this next album, I'm hoping will take a bit more of a carnivalesque approach. It's going to amp up the weirdness for sure. It's going to take some more musical and instrumental risks than the Golden West did. And I think that that can sort of be emphasized in the closing track of the Golden West, which is the eponymous The Golden West, where it sort of leans a little bit more into psychedelia and into grooviness and into sort of strange cinematic layered instrumentation. I want to take more of that into this next album while still retaining its folk-centric core, its singer-songwriter, and its emotionally honest core, while amplifying it to a more surreal degree. And as I mentioned, the concept is going to be a little Faustian, sort of telling the story of a deal with the devil and a fall from grace.
The Robert Johnson route.
The Robert Johnson route. Exactly. So that's something I'm excited to work on. And then also the lyrics from the Golden West are being published as a poetry book by Finishing Line Press, and that's set to come out early in 2027. So there's going to be some readings and book tour dates coming from there as well, which is exciting because I'll get to tell people, hey, remember that thing I did 6 months ago? Here it is again.
No, it sounds like you're covering all your bases. You're living your best life, and that's fantastic.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, it's there's a lot to be excited about and a lot to be proud of, and it's something I have to remind myself of every day because it's so easy, especially with independent artists like myself, who's just trying to make as much work as I can and get it out there by any means necessary. It's easy to get bogged down, especially with the state of the world being what it is right now. What is the import of what I'm doing? Why I'm caring so much about this? What does it actually mean? But I've made progress in a way that the me of 2 years ago never could have even imagined.
So the final question, what music are you listening to at the moment that people may not be aware of and should take some time to check out?
One of my favorite bands right now is a Canadian band called Timber Timber, and they do very sort of scary folk, very sort of dark and haunting and really sort of grim psychedelia. I highly recommend them. I haven't heard anything else like them. They are bizarre. Their lyrics are breathtaking and dark and weird. I'm on a huge Tom Waits kick right now. I'm listening to Tom Waits constantly.
For people wishing to find out more about August Gladstone, check out his website, augustgladstone.com, and he's on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Bandcamp. The Golden West by August Gladstone is out now on Commodore and is available via Bandcamp and all the usual streaming platforms. August, thanks for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Daniel. This is wonderful to talk to you.